Are you guys ready for the shit show that we're about to incur, guys? Andrew Tate returns to debate Piers Morgan on Elon Musk and free speech. Now, you know the last time that Andrew Tate was on Piers Morgan, I did a full reaction to that. Go check that one out, guys. That was a disaster. You know, Andrew Tate actually won that. He had 97% comments in his favor, guys. You know, Piers Morgan just came out looking like a dickhead. So, you know, obviously he always is like that. He doesn't let people speak, guys. And he's just this kind of old guy who's kind of, you know, regimented in his ways. You know, when he talks to people, has them on the podcast or whatever, he speaks more than the people. It's just odd, guys. You know, when you have guests on your podcast, it'd be respectful to let them talk and let them say their piece, you know, because you're running the podcast. You can just pull up the camera anytime you want and speak, but this guy obviously has a lot to say, so let's get into it, guys. I read the comments saying that it's actually a great interview, civil discussion, everything, so let's see how civil it really was. Make sure to hit that subscribe button if you guys enjoy my content. Leave in the comments down below other content that you guys want me to react to, you know, social, political stuff, and let's get it.
His videos have been viewed billions of times online, but he's been banned from pretty much every mainstream social media platform, including Twitter. Andrew Tate, welcome back to Piers Morgan Uncensored. Your take on this, I think, is quite interesting because you've been a victim of being, if victim's the right word, but you've been removed from social media platforms for your opinions. Elon Musk has dedicated himself, he says, to restoring free speech. Do you think that's going to include you, for example?
I don't think it matters if it includes me or not. I think what's important is that free speech is the #1 weapon against absolute tyranny. And although you cannot have complete free speech because then conversations completely break down into asinine insult fests, I do like the idea of the changing of the guard when it comes to control over information.
Is it?
That's actually a good take, as changing of the guard, you know, getting different people in to monitor these new social media platforms is actually probably a good thing. You know, YouTube has complete freedom of speech. It's probably the hardest one to get banned from. That's like, it's, or apart from like Twitter, I guess, but Twitter you can get kind of taken down quite easily. YouTube is quite hard to get banned from, and you can also make a lot of money from YouTube. So it's the GOAT, guys. It's like the ocean of information, of knowledge that everybody uses. Well, actually hardly anyone uses that I know, but you know, YouTube should be the #1 social media platform that has different changing of the leaders in it. But yeah, pretty cool. He's actually letting them speak this time.
Possible, Andrew Tate, to actually police something like Twitter, to be a platform for genuine free speech? Or is it so toxic and tribal now that whatever happens, you know, before we had all the people on the right screaming away that they were being no platformed and so on. Now you've got all the people on the left screaming that they're being diminished in some way. It's very tribal, very toxic. Can Musk cut through that? And if so, how?
Hopefully he can, guys, because Twitter is definitely a cesspit of bullshit, guys. You know, at least on YouTube, there's no ISIS beheading or porn or any crazy shit. On Twitter, everything goes, you know, everything goes. It's pretty much, I mean, there's tons of bots. There's all this craziness, guys. No one's getting paid for any of it, but there's only 130 characters, so you can't really express your opinion. But I do like that Elon Musk is in charge now. I think he'll be more of a regulated guy, but in the sense of like just bots and stuff that interferes with actual, you know, debate with people and stuff like that. So
yeah, it's going to be extremely difficult. There's always going to be one group of people who are extremely unhappy, but I think that anybody who's perspicacious enough to understand the truth of what's been going on in the world recently will know that the left and their narratives have certainly been protected for a very long time.
That's true. It seems like the left get more of a platform. Like if I do more left-wing stuff on this channel, none of it gets demonetized. I get paid loads for it, but, well, loads, you know, as big as my channel is. But if I do right-wing stuff, then a lot of the time it gets kind of censored. So, I mean, it is what it is, guys. But yeah.
And the universe has swings and balances, and God often restores balance to the universe, and perhaps it might swing the other way for a while. I truthfully am a person who believes that all points of view are extremely important, because as soon as you block points of view, you have absolute tyranny.
And in a way, it's sort of self-defeating, isn't it? Because you carried on getting huge attention. It was interesting to me that when you came on the show, for example, we've had, I think, nearly 6 million people have viewed the whole interview that we did, which is a huge number of people, certainly far higher than watched it on conventional television. So you have a whole you have a whole world out there online which operates away from social media platforms.
Yeah, I've been very, very successful in spite of them, but not many people can do that. I'm in a pretty unique position. But I think that everybody needs a voice to a degree, and social media platforms are now the most important platforms on the planet.
This is the most true thing I've ever heard in my life. Guys, you know, when a man hits his wall or when you tell men to shut up, guys, it's the number one way to demean someone. You know, the reason that men go kill themselves and all this crazy stuff is because people don't listen to them, guys. You know, different, you know, let's say women get from their beauty, they get their status from their, you know, some money, whatever. For a man, guys, the most important thing is that people listen to them, guys. If no one's listening to your ass, if your kids aren't listening, your family isn't listening, I mean, all these things, guys, no one's listening to you at whatsoever. I mean, that's a surefire way to really kill a guy. You know, killing a man is when nobody listens to you. You know, it's horrendous.
They control information and they influence real world decisions. And they influence people's perception of reality. The last few years of COVID have been a perfect example of what happens when you censor one side of the argument and you only allow one point of view to be purported by the matrix in and of itself, and that's how you end up in tyrannical situations. I think you were just discussing that, Piers.
Yeah, and I think that's a perfectly valid point. You know, people have quite rightly held me to task over some of the positions I took during the COVID pandemic, notably when the scientists said, as a definitive fact, that you couldn't transmit the virus if you had the vaccine. It turned out that wasn't true. And I based my observations on that supposed fact and said, right, well, in that case, if you refuse to be vaccinated, you shouldn't get the same rights as people who've been vaccinated. If it's true that if you're unjabbed, you can pass it on. It turned out, actually, there's not much difference whether you've been vaccinated or not. And at that point, I changed my mind. But I felt that there were a lot of people who were being deplatformed from Twitter at the time for questioning the validity of scientific statements, and they would then be a complete U-turn. So I do think it was a very interesting period, actually, for testing what free speech means.
It was actually worse than that. You're right, Piers, but it was actually worse than interesting, because what happens is when you censor an entire side of the argument and only allowed one side of the argument to have a voice, you are changing reality in real time. You are shaping the world. The only reason that scam continued as long as it did, and the only reason people didn't get to see their own parents get buried, and the only reason people sat and missed cancer appointments because they were scared of the common cold, was because they were censoring anybody who said anything contrary to the purported version of events that the mainstream media decided they want the entire world to swallow.
You know, here in Ireland, guys, we had the longest lockdown in the world. It was like 2 years. You know, it's a complete disgrace, guys. In places like Japan and all these different places, world, you know, islands and New Zealand and stuff, Australia, all they did was shut down the whole country. They did, so no flights coming in or out. But everyone was, you know, everybody was allowed to live their lives freely, drive wherever. But you know, just don't leave your country for 2 years. I would never even minded that. But to completely say you're not allowed to leave your house for 2 years is completely insane, guys. It doesn't stop anything. Logically, it doesn't make any sense whatsoever. You know, it should have been like no flights coming in from Italy, where the main cases were coming from. So I don't exactly know how that would work, but yeah.
It's beyond simply interesting, and it's beyond simply funny or coincidental.
Yeah, I mean, I will challenge you on one thing. It's not the common cold, right? COVID-19 has killed 6.6 million people.
Yeah, it's probably a little bit more serious than that. Like, people have died from it and stuff like that, but, you know, some people were calling just another flu, something like that. So
it is one of the most deadly viruses, certainly of our lifetime. So it wasn't the common cold, but I do think it is completely justified for people to say we should be more cautious, I think, about accepting during fast-moving pandemics the word of scientists as being sacrosanct, because on a number of things, from the use of masks to the efficacy of vaccines in preventing transmission, they did massive U-turns.
I've read enough history books to know that the people who do the censoring are never the good guys. And they've been censoring a lot of arguments for a very long time in the name of good. They are weaponizing virtue, and it's always in the name of tyranny. Anybody who is out here trying to silence an entire side of an argument on any subject, whether it's COVID-19, immigration, anything else, they are the evil people who are out for absolute mind control of the populace. And they should be feared.
I certainly agree that I think the healthiest thing for any democracy is for all views to be aired and debated. We seem to have lost the ability to debate. You know, when I interviewed you, yeah, we had a few fractious moments, but actually, I thought it was a pretty spirited debate between people who perhaps had, you know, preconceived views of each other.
A few fractious moments. I would say like 90% of it was bullshit because he just kept interrupting you guys. You know, he didn't let him speak for longer than literally 30 seconds. It was crazy. It was absolutely crazy.
And I've got no problem interviewing you now about these because I think you have an interesting take on this stuff.
No, he has no problem interviewing you now because he realized that Tate has so much pull and influence that he's actually increasing his show's numbers by a ton. He probably lost a lot of numbers because he interviewed him so badly that people started doing U-turns on him. That's probably why, guys, you know.
And that's the key to life. When you reach that level of adolescence in your mindset where you can't handle any point of view that is contrary to your own, then you're truly a broken person. And that's what the internet is purporting. It's very interesting you said about Twitter being tribal. There's a large contingent of people on Twitter who simply cannot handle reading an opinion which differs from their own. And that is a degree of immaturity that we do not need adults to be functioning with in the modern world.
No, I agree. If you were Elon Musk, this idea of charging $8 now a month, whatever it is, to access the blue tick premium Twitter account, would you?
Yeah, so anyone now in the world can buy for $8. I think it's probably like €6 or whatever in Ireland, whatever the conversion rate is, to pay for that blue tick beside your name for the month, and then your comment gets shown up before all the other premium accounts, I suppose. I don't know, guys. I agree with it. You know, he can do what he wants with it, but to be fair, now everyone has a chance to be kind of, you know, quote unquote, getting their voice out on Twitter. So,
would you do that? Would you pay the extra?
I think that social media companies for a very long time have lived in an absolute fantasy where they've printed money from thin air by charging people for pixels, and they grew into these large conglomerates with too many staff sitting around doing nothing, having coffee breaks. And Elon Musk is a businessman. He's walked into the office and he's firing a bunch of people who are messing around doing nothing, and he wants his business to make money, as it absolutely should. And how he...
Yeah, he said on Twitter, I follow on Twitter, and he says that they were losing $4 million a day, guys. Actually, in Dublin, this is hilarious. In Dublin, Twitter just fired something like 500 people with just an email. I don't think they exactly fired the 500 staff that, you know, run the entire Twitter office in Dublin, but they fired a ton of different staff, guys. You know, people woke up after 5 years of working for Twitter and just all of a sudden, poof, gone. And people can't accept that. You know, we actually had our prime minister, you know, or whatever, TD, you know, all these, well, he's not. I know Leo Varadkar isn't, but one of the main, you know, heads of Parliament or whatever the case, you know, whatever we have in, you know, government. Nobody even cares in Ireland anyway. We're not even that big enough to make any substantial decisions. But Leo Varadkar came on the news saying, oh, you know, it's unacceptable that Elon Musk is firing all the staff in Twitter. And it's like, no, dude, that's just the way the world works. If you don't become self-sufficient in your own kind of business or your own work, then your ass is just another number. You can get fired at the drop of a hat, and that's why I encourage everyone to run their own business and do their own thing, guys. You can just be fired or cancelled or whatever the case may be. In the case, you know, in a moment's notice. So,
he decides that happens is his prerogative. I don't see why we should sit and accept that a website needs 200,000 people sitting around discussing in long meetings, sitting on beanbags about policy of human rights of some garbage, when he's come along and said, no, I'm a businessman, we're going to charge for our service, we're going to reduce the number of staff, and we're going to be a functional, coherent company, as they should be. And it's his prerogative to do it, as he's bought the company.
Yeah,
I think he can do whatever he wants.
Yeah, I mean, I don't disagree, because I remember the appalling censorship of the New York Post exclusive about Hunter Biden, the son of the president, about his laptop. This is 3 weeks before the election that Joe Biden won. He was heading, you know, to a possible victory, but it was tight. And that story, they reckon, could have tipped it either way. But it was completely suppressed and censored, starting with Twitter, then Facebook, then others. Twitter literally locked out the New York Post account for 2 weeks for breaking a completely true story.
Damn,
I thought that
crazy,
was shameful.
Yeah.
It's
worse than shameful. It's worse than shameful. When you control information, you control the real world. They affect the real world in real time. They are genuinely affecting the reality people live in. They are not just a company. They're not just a social media platform. It affects absolutely every single person on the planet when it changes who is elected.
Facts.
I don't want to comment specifically on Hunter Biden or the laptop. I would never kill myself. But I don't think it's fair that they would hide certain key information that close to an election. And the fact that they've done that was done specifically to affect the world that we all live in. And we all have to suffer the consequences of those things. So to sit and say that these companies can just do whatever they want, they're private, etc. No, free speech is beyond important for democracy. It's important for the reality that we exist under.
Andrew Tate, thank you for joining me. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Frank.
Surprised you called him a friend there at the end. Yeah, what do you guys think, man? I actually liked that. That was a great interview. Finally, he wasn't interrupting him. That was absolutely phenomenal. Hopefully, he has him on again. Piers Morgan knows that he can get the biggest pull ever if he has Tate on the show. So, yeah, guys, Twitter is great now. I think it should be mostly free speech. I obviously think that propaganda, people killing each other like ISIS and all this crazy shit shouldn't be on it. Nobody disagrees with that. But yeah, 100% free speech, because you gotta let people talk. You know what I'm saying? So especially men, guys, you know, that's like the center of a guy's moral values and just, you know, his whole thing. The whole thing from if a man is somewhat worth anything is the ability to talk and people listen and this kind of thing, guys. You know, that's why people blow up on the internet just from talking. It's like the biggest thing, more than physical violence or anything like that, guys. It's the biggest thing to a man, in my opinion, and telling a guy to shut up or sit down or be quiet is the best way to kill him, or censor him. You know what I mean? Censoring is the best way to kill a man. So, hope you guys enjoy that, man. I love you all. Please leave in the comments down below what you guys think of this interview, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.